Hi, I'm Mike from 1A Auto. We've been selling auto parts for over 30 years. We're dedicated to delivering quality auto parts, expert customer service, fast and free shipping, all backed by our 100% satisfaction guarantee. So visit us at 1aauto.com, your trusted source for quality auto parts.
All right, we're gonna start doing the front brakes on this by loosening the load nut so we can take the wheel off. We wanna loosen it while it's on the ground. Just using a 22mm socket and a breaker bar to get these loose. You don't have to take them all the way out, just get them loose. Because once they're loose, we're gonna lift this up on a lift, but you can support it on jack stands in your driveway. And of course, once these are loose, it's a lot easier to get them off when the vehicle's up in the air. All right, so now I have it up in the air and these are already loose. I'm just gonna use a hand ratchet. Once they get real loose, you can just use the socket. We're gonna use a C-clamp to compress the caliper while it's still attached here. And so there's two pistons. We're gonna have to just kind of gently compress one side and then flip to the other. So as you can see, just slowly pressing it in. And this is gonna make it easier when you go to reinstall the caliper to already have the pistons compressed. So I'll get that side a little bit, and on the other side, you can already see that upper piston has gone in. Keep working it back and forth. This makes it easier to pull the caliper off, and it's also going to make it easier when we go to reinstall it because the new pads will be thicker. As your brakes wear, the piston moves out of the caliper to take up that space. So when you go to put new brake pads in, it can be hard to put them in because the caliper piston has moved out to compensate for the old worn pads. I think that's gonna work for us. So we're gonna go ahead and start taking this caliper off. Okay, so we're gonna remove this bottom bolt here and this top bolt here. These are bolted into the caliper slide pins. So they also have a second hex head in here that you need to counter hold while you're loosening these. That way it doesn't spin. All right, actually I'm gonna try removing it without counter holding this first. It might be stuck in there enough that it'll let me go. There we go, so now it's loose. So sometimes you can get away without holding that slide pin. But just be aware that if it does start to just spin, you're gonna need to counter hold that. And this was a 19mm, and that is also a 19mm. So we're gonna put that back in now that it's loose. You don't have to tighten it all the way. Just give it something so that the caliper won't swing on you, so that you can go up to the upper one and break that free. So now I'm getting the lower one undone, and the caliper is going to be loose, so you want to hold on to it. And we're going to take it, we'll swing it up. I'm going to take a bungee cord here, just kind of loop it around, and you just hang it, just like that. It's out of your way. It's not stressing out the rubber brake hose, and it's not going to fall on the ground. Use a small pry bar or flat-headed screwdriver, and these are already pretty loose. But you just want to kind of pry them out, just like that, and they'll come right out. Okay, so now we're going to loosen these caliper bracket mounting bolts. They can be on there pretty tight. These are an 18mm, and then I like to use a dead blow or a rubber mallet to break them free. Otherwise, you just sometimes just can't do it by hand. So we're gonna hit it and just try to break them free. And once they're free, you can use just a regular box ratchet, or you can get a ratcheting one and just spin them right out of there. But leave this one get this one loose. Whichever one you work on first, get it loose, leave it in there. Work on the next one, that way the caliper bracket doesn't spin on you. All right, so now I freed these up with the box wrench. I'm just gonna use the 18mm socket and ratchet just to spin them out a little faster. Okay, so to remove this rotor from the hub, you've got to take out this Torx bit, which is a T30. There might be 2 of these, but on this one there's only 1. So if this rotor was rusted on here and stuck, take one of your lug nuts and just kind of thread it down so that you know, when you finally get it free, it doesn't fall off. So tighten it down a little bit, not too tight. You're gonna spray some rust penetrant oil into here, let it soak for a little bit. You can take your rubber mallet, you just kind of smack different sizes of the rotor, and eventually it will come free. So another way to free this rotor up if it's stuck, so after you've sprayed penetrating oil in here, again, keep a lug nut on here fairly loose so it doesn't just fall off if it finally breaks free. As opposed to trying to hit it with a rubber mallet, you could thread some screws in here. That's what these are for. They push against the hub, and you can evenly screw it in and it should back the rotor off. And then it should pull right off. So on this side, we've got the old rotor, the old brake pads, and we've got the new rotor and brake pads from 1aauto.com. As you can see, the new ones have the backing plates riveted in them, just like the old ones. They match. This is the inside. This is the inside of the new pad. And these are the outside again. They have the shims riveted right to them. They're the same size. Same type of chamfers on them. Those should fit in the car nicely. All right, so before we put the new rotor on, I'm just gonna clean up some of the rust that's on here. This one's not too bad, but you can just take a wire brush and just knock off some of the heavier stuff. That way the rotor slides on easily. You're gonna notice I'm gonna put it on backwards because I'm gonna take some brake parts cleaner and just kind of spray it down. Get some of that packaging oil off of it. Spray in here a little bit too. Okay, so now I'm gonna flip it around. And when you go to install it, there's this hole in the hub here, the threaded hole. That's for that Torx bolt. So you wanna make sure you line it up with one of these countersunk holes. There's 3 of them on here. And once it's lined up, you can take your T30 Torx again, get it started. This way the rotor doesn't go anywhere while you're working on it. So once you get this T30 screw in here, it's going to be torqued to 106 inch-pounds. So we're going to use our torque wrench. You might need to just hold the rotor as you do it. Shouldn't take much, right there. Now I've got this screw in here. I'm going to take our brake parts cleaner and just clean the outside of the rotor. So we're going to clean up these brake pad clips. These are usually stainless, so they don't really get too rusty. The rust is basically like stains. So you just need to take some brake parts cleaner, just kind of clean them up. If they're real rusty for whatever reason, you should replace them. But we're gonna just kind of clean them. Take a wire brush, get all the gunk out. You can take a rag. Get them in there, get nice and clean. Okay, so we're not gonna replace the slide pins in this caliper because they're both moving freely. But if you need new ones, you can get new ones from 1aauto.com. They're just like the originals. And to change these, you just kind of get your fingers under there and they'll just kind of slide off the boot. They're filled with grease. If you need to clean them, you can just take a rag and just wipe them off. As you can see, they're just like, replacements are just like the originals. They've got this little flat spot in there. Those are your caliper mounting bolts. They screw into the back of those. So we're just gonna throw a little bit of grease on there because I wiped it off. Caliper glide grease. Slide that right back in. There might be a little air stuck in there. You can just peel back the boot gently and just press it in. Just wipe off any excess. So these are caliper mounting bolts that go through the hub and mount into the caliper. They've got factory thread locking compound on them that needs to be cleaned off. And then you need to reapply fresh thread locking compound before you install them and then torque them. So use a little bit of brake parts cleaner, spray them down, and you take your wire brush, scrub that stuff out of there, get them as clean as you can. So before we install the caliper bracket, I'm just going to apply some thread locker to the bolts. That way they're ready to go. You don't have to go crazy with this stuff. This bracket's gonna go this way. I'm gonna start with the top one. Sometimes you kind of have to play with it a little bit to line it up. So you can just get them close with an 18mm socket and ratchet. You don't have to kill them at this point. So once they're close, now we're gonna take our torque wrench, 148 foot-pounds, and we're gonna torque these down. All right, so now we're gonna take the new pads. This is the back pad. It's got this little extra metal bit. It's different from the outside pad. It's got the wear indicator on it. Just gonna give them a quick spray with brake clean. Try not to touch this now that you've cleaned it. I'll take a little bit of grease. Put it on the tabs. That way it will slide on the caliper clips. Start with the bottom one. Just gonna flip it up and push it into place. All right, I'm going to repeat the same steps for the front. So the outside pad is different. It fits the contour of the caliper bracket. Okay, now we're ready for the caliper. We're going to unhook it from our bungee cords. We'll leave those aside. Don't forget them though. Okay, so now we're going to reinstall the caliper. And because we compressed the caliper earlier, it should slide right over. If you need to compress it more, you can take your old pad, just put it in there, take that C-clamp that you used earlier, and then press the pads in. You might have to just push the top and bottom caliper pins in a little bit to get to slide over. Hold on to this because it might shift. And take your caliper bolts, and start threading those in. And get the lower one captured. So these are 19mm. I'm just gonna bring them down so they just start getting tight. Because there is a final torque, it's 74 foot-pounds. We'll get those tight. Okay, so we're gonna torque these caliper bracket, or these caliper bolts to 74 foot-pounds. Now the caliper slide pin can spin. So that's where that 19mm hex in here comes into play. So we're gonna take and open it at 19. And we're gonna counter hold it as we take our torque wrench and torque it. We do the same for the bottom. Okay, now we're all set. We're gonna remove our bungee cord we're using to hold the caliper up. All right, we're gonna put the wheel on. Get your lug nuts all started by hand so you don't cross thread them. All right, so once you've got them started by hand, These are a 22 millimeter. We'll just snug them up. All right, with the vehicle on the ground, now we can torque the lug nuts to 140 foot-pounds. Again, it's a 22 millimeter socket. We have a cross pattern. When you're done torquing the wheels, you can put your wheel cover back on. So this has a little tab here and a little mark here that needs to go with the valve stem. Okay, so after your brake job, you just want to step on the pedal, don't push it to the floor, just about 2/3 of the way down, and just sort of slowly pump it up. This lets the calipers come out to meet the pads because we compress them. And a nice firm pedal.
Thanks for watching. Visit us at 1AAuto.com for quality auto parts, fast and free shipping, and the best customer service in the industry.